Hey, this is Default, and today we're going to talk a little bit about level design, specifically for this little indie game called Castle Story. Now, if you're just browsing across YouTube randomly and you somehow come across my shitty little videos, then you may not know what this game is. So, assuming you haven't already left, let me fill you in. Castle Story is a game where you build castles, and there's evil golems in the shit, and floating islands, and oh yeah, explosions. Okay, that's probably all you need to hear on this game. The rest of you are probably wondering how to build better maps, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but I'm pretty sick of having maps that look like this on the workshop, so hopefully you get something out of this video. Basically, the common issue I see in newcomers to level design, and this includes myself when I was first mapping, is they sort of have a tendency to just slap down a layout and expect it to work. Obviously, this is a fallacy. There's a lot of intricate design concepts that go into creating a map, and as you might be able to guess, this varies from game to game. I did a bit of research and hopefully I can bring to light some of these concepts so that you can create better levels. Now, full disclaimer, I'm still not very good at this game, and of course I'm not on the actual dev team, so it's entirely possible that everything I say here is going to be wrong. Just keep that in mind. First, we're going to talk about the invasion game mode. For invasion, you really need to be worrying about what you shouldn't do rather than what you should. For instance, try and avoid putting enemy spawns too far away from the player. The player shouldn't feel like they can go make a lunch in the time that it takes the enemy to actually show up. Also, I know a few official maps do this, but I would discourage you from putting two different enemy spawns on the same path but at different distances from the player. Since from what I've seen, the Corruptrons will only come from one spawn point at a time, so all this will do is make some waves feel like you're waiting longer than others, and that's just annoying. You also shouldn't place Corruptrons too close to the player. Like, if they're showing up your doorstep immediately, then they're way too close. You also shouldn't make the player feel like they're building in a confined space. And this is different from giving them some odd terrain to work with. I would encourage that to a certain extent as it breeds creativity. I'm talking about giving the player a very minimal space for them to build anything. The name of the game is Castle Story. Let them build a goddamn castle. Also, don't starve them for resources, if you can avoid it. The player's going to be building for a while. They're going to want stuff to build with. As for what you should do, it's really just a game of balance. Try and keep track of what advantage players are given, and contrast that with 1 to 2 disadvantages depending on how strong the relevant advantage is. I think a good example of this is the workshop map Bastion. It seems fairly simple on the surface, but in that simplicity is a surprisingly well-balanced map. The player is given both a height advantage to work with and a pre-built castle ready to go. But to counter that, Corruptrons spawn relatively close, so catapults are going to be tough to use, and the area around the castle is very open. It also puts resources fairly far away, making it a bit trickier to arm up the castle. Or you could go the full simplistic route and look at troubled heaps, where neither you nor the enemy Corruptrons have any real advantages or disadvantages. Perfectly level playing field. Alright, now let's talk about the Conquest game mode. Now this game mode I have a lot less experience in, but I made a point to really study the map so that I at least know somewhat what I'm talking about. Basically, Conquest is a game of getting the upper hand over your enemy so that you can eventually capture all the crystals and win the round. Now there's one part of that sentence that I feel really needs to be stressed. Upper hand. Because you're going to want the player to secure vantage points. Basically, I feel like it helps to avoid looking at crystals as simple nodes to capture, and instead look at them as tactical areas to secure. So you need to get the player to think, okay, what will securing the area around this crystal do to help me win the round? And obviously, the map should be able to provide them with an answer. Let's take a look at Calibri, because I feel like it posed this concept off the best. Take a look at these two crystals here. The one in front is designed as a sort of checkpoint before the player pushes forward and moves to the next crystal, whereas the one up top serves as a vantage point to defend the crystal from oncoming attackers. Very nice. And let's not forget the center crystal. Keeping it secure is a right pain in the ass, but in the meantime it offers a good defense on all surrounding crystals, so it's very valuable to try and hold on to. If you can hold on to the crystal long enough to capture all the ones surrounding it, then you have a good chance of winning the round. Surprisingly, that's all I have to say on Conquest. There's a few small things that I should mention, such as having crystals evenly spaced out. Try and keep most of the crystals on a single connected island, as breaking up the islands makes it next to unplayable when up against Corruptrons. And also, avoid placing two player spawns too close to each other. It isn't that big of a problem in 1v1s, but on 4-player matches this can create problems real fast. One other design thing that I want to mention is give your map a gimmick, so to speak. Have something to shake up the formula so it isn't just chalk standard gameplay. Make your map memorable. I'm also going to briefly mention the visuals of your map. I'm tempted to say don't even try, as the devs haven't put any different terrain surfaces in the game yet, and voxel-based terrain doesn't lend very well to odd terrain formations. The only thing I can advise is to play around with the terrain some. See what you can do to make it look interesting. I'm not a fan of the visual style that newer official maps have been going with, which is very simplistic, flat, orthogonal designs, but at the same time I understand why they did it, because the game simply handles that terrain type better, and it creates a clean aesthetic. I think it'll take some experimentation to get an aesthetic that really serves as a nice middle ground between flat, basic terrain and weird and wonky land formations. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Go do some mapping. Yeah!